dear ones. It's time again for the Pulp, Raconteur and The Swordsman of Mars by Otis, Adelbert, Kline. This edition comes to you from a hotel room, which looks pretty nondescript, but I'll tell you right now, I am recording live at MarsCon. It's not live, because I'm doing this in advance. The point is, I am at MarsCon, a lovely little sci-fi convention in Williamsburg, Virginia. This year's theme, Werewolves on Mars. While this story does not include werewolves, it does include many, many creatures of the strange and wondrous variety. When last we saw our hero, he had been betrayed by the woman he thought he loved, and that he thought loved him. He was entrapped. He could not escape. What will become of him? Chapter 13. No, Lugra, wait! It was Neva who had sprung from her couch, and now stood between the sad-faced headsman and the kneeling Thorn. Lurgo stared sorrowfully down at her, his blade still poised in mid-air. Irrence Tell ceased his pacing for the first time and looked up. "What's this, daughter? Can it be that you care for this vile miscreant?" "Care for him?" Neva stamped her foot angrily. "I hate him for the affront he has put upon me. For much less than this you have caused minor offenders to suffer for days before death was finally granted them. Yet this seducer, this ravisher who has dared to lay hands on your own daughter, is let off with a mere stroke of the headsman's sword. Do you hold my honor so lightly as this?" "By the wrath of Diza, you are right!" exclaimed Irrence Tell. "I have been too hasty. Let be, Lurgo." At this, the tall headsman sadly shouldered his sword and trudged away, the sleepy-eyed boy with the basket trailing in his wake. "Does it not seem fair, my father," said Neva, "that since the crime of this malefactor was against me, I should be the one to pronounce sentence upon him?" "It does indeed, daughter, it does indeed," agreed Irrence Tell. "Suppose you name his fate." "Why, then?" "I'll sentence him to labor in the beryllium mines," she said. "I hear that men are long in dying there, and that they suffer much." "But," interposed Selhan, "there are tortures." "Since when," asked Neva, facing him haughtily, "has the Dixtar's deputy acquired the right to question the mandates of the Dixtar's daughter?" "You are right, daughter, you are right," interposed Irrence Tell. "You must not interfere, Selhan. She has pronounced a fitting sentence, and we confirm it. Away with him, warriors!" Thorn, still dazed by the blow on his head, dimly comprehended that he had been saved from the stroke of the sword, only to be condemned to a far worse fate. As he was dragged away by the warriors, he saw the face of Irrence Tell sneering, that of Selhan grinning malevolently, and those of the warriors stern and pitiless. But at Neva he did not look. After conducting him through numerous passageways, the soldiers led him into a small room, at one end of which a hole about 3 feet in diameter was cut in the wall. Into this hole they thrust him feet first, attached a tag to his arm, and marked "Beryllium Mines," and gave him a violent push. With a speed that gave him a peculiar sensation in the pit of his stomach, and caused a considerable pressure on his eardrums, he shot downward in a dark slanting tube, the inner surface of which was as smooth as glass. Presently he glided over a series of rises which slowed his progress, then out into an open trough under a long, low shed. At the end of the trough, 2 soldiers caught him and stood him erect. To his surprise, Thorn now saw that he was in one of the large warehouses which lined the banks of the canal, over which he had already passed. After the soldiers had examined his tag, he was herded with a group of other prisoners, similarly tagged, who were huddled around a large globe heater on the dock. Here he stood, slowly turning like the others, for while the side towards the heater was comfortably warm, the one directly away from it was subjected to the freezing temperatures of the early morning air. Presently the sun, heralded only by a brief dawn light in this tenuous atmosphere, popped above the horizon, its blue-white shafts instantly dissipating the cold, and swiftly melting the shell of ice which covered the canal. Moored at the dock was a low, narrow craft about 200 feet in length. The hull was of a brown metal, and the upper structure was roofed over with iridescent amber-colored crystal, curved like the back of a whale. Through one of the doors the prisoners were now driven. As he followed along with the others, Thorn noticed the strange propulsive devices used on this craft, which were shaped much like the webbed feet and legs of aquatic birds, and were fastened at intervals along its sides. As soon as the prisoners had been herded on board, the metal door clanged shut behind them. Shortly thereafter the craft glided away from the dock, propelled smoothly and noiselessly by its artificial webbed feet. Thorn presently tired of the sameness of the scenery, and entered into a conversation with one of his fellow unfortunates, a man who had once been high in the councils of the Commode, but who had dared to oppose Irrint's tell. Levry Thommel was a silver-haired man in the late autumn of life. He showed no rancor against the Dickstar, but took his sentence as the decree of fate. At most, he told Thorn, I would have only enjoyed a few short years of life. But you are a young man. Your case is sad indeed, as you would have had much to live for. For a time silence fell between them. Then Thorn asked, What are these baridium mines like? Have you any idea? There are vast workings, which require much machinery and equipment, and the labor of many slaves. The baridium ore, after being brought up from deposits far underground, is crushed and cleaned of all impurities. Then it is distilled. The liquid which passes over in the still is mixed with phosphorus and several other chemicals, and used to fill the light globes with which you are familiar. The solid residue left in the stills is calcined until it becomes an impalpable powder, fearfully water-hungry. Then it is combined with several elements, the most important of which is metallic sodium, to make the firepower which instantly ignites when moistened. Thorn was about to ask him how all this affected the slaves, when the boat suddenly slowed down, then stopped beside a dock of black stone which jutted from the wall on the outer side of the canal. The metal door was thrown back, the prisoners were herded out, and Thorn lost track of Levry Thommel. They were marched through a high archway in the thick black wall, and thence into an immense building constructed of the same material. Here they formed a line to be examined by an officer, who assigned them to various working groups. Thorn was pleased when he found that Levry Thommel was assigned to this group, which numbered about 20 men. A guard marched them through a long corridor, lighted by small baridium globes, and thence into a broad courtyard which overlooked an immense pit, several miles in diameter, the rim of which was circled by a high black wall. As soon as they entered this court, The prisoners encountered air laden with fine dust and acrid fumes, which smarted their lungs and nostrils, and set them to coughing and sneezing violently. Meanwhile, the guard urged them onward to the edge of the pit, where he turned them over to another guard, whose face, head, and body were protected by a breathing mask, helmet, and airtight suit. This new guard spoke to them through a sound amplifier which projected from the top of his helmet.
"Down the stairway," he ordered, "and step lively. I'll make the first laggard regret his slothfulness."
The deeper they descended, the more difficult breathing became, until, when they reached the bottom of the stairway, the fumes fairly seared their lungs, while the fine dust settling on the skin made them itch and burn. Merely being in the place without a protective suit was a torment. As these things came to Thorn's attention, he thought again of Neva. More sharply than the baridium fumes seared his lungs, the thought of her perfidy seared his heart. What will become of our hero in the baridium mines? Will he die there, worked to death because his love betrayed him? Find out next time on the next episode of The Swordsman of Mars by Otis Adelbert Kline.